Okay, I think we are all set. But yeah, thank you guys for joining today. I'm super excited. Obviously, have a great panel in store. My name is Gracie. I'll be your host today. I'm a recent graduate from Boston University and have been working across professional sports all throughout college. I've worked in professional basketball, hockey, and now tennis, of course. Worked the past two US Open tournaments in player operations, which is where I met our co-founder Vanya King, and I've been working closely with her this past semester on these panels, and I'm super passionate about it. Um, Wanted to wish everyone a happy AAPI month. At APITA, we've been doing our inaugural set of educational speaker panels. So we kicked off last week, which was more centered towards more executive panelists. This week, of course, more like early careers focus, and then next week we have one focus for junior players. So if you're interested in coaching, on the junior side, we can sign up via our LinkedIn or our website. Um, and then just wanted to denote that this is going to be recorded. We're going to push it out to our social channels. And again, today's focus of the panel is definitely more early careers, so how to break into the industry, any insider tips you guys have for pivoting into sports. Um, I'll start with some more like guiding questions, and then we can open it up to any questions our audience has. But yeah, I'll turn it over to our incredible panelists today. You guys can kind of intro yourself, give a brief intro on kind of your current position and kind of how you started in tennis or in sports. We'll go in alphabetical order, so we'll start with Sydney.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me. I'm Cindy Stein. I'm currently the director of events for United States Tennis Association's coaching division. Just launched the coaching business last year in August. So we're in the infancy kind of startup space, but it's been really fun. From I came from Major League Soccer, just worked there for probably a few years, overseeing the hotels and meetings department there. Worked on programs like All-Star, MLS Cup, um, tons of games, hospitality, things like that. So had a lot of fun there, and also have experience at the Women's Tennis Association, where I oversaw VIP hospitality, and that's where I started my career in sport. And yeah, happy to be here and offer some nuggets of wisdom.
Awesome, thank you, Sydney. And we'll throw it over to Ivan now.
Hi everyone. I'm Ivan. Uh, I've been playing tennis for my whole life. I started at 6 years old, and I played collegiate tennis at UC Davis and then SMU. I personally never thought I would get into coaching tennis that's what I'm doing at the moment. But just kind of found my calling that like tennis was my passion, and I found my way back home in San Diego. I'm currently player development coach at the Barnes Tennis Center in the Steve Adamson Tennis Academy. Sorry, there's a plane flying over me. Um, Part of it, just really enjoy the development of working with young juniors, elite juniors, just trying to get them to play collegiate tennis and maybe beyond if they have the passion for it, and just a lot of guiding for them and like mentoring and just pushing them through this really tough career path as a junior. But I'm very happy to be here and happy to share all my insight.
Thanks, Ivan. And next up, we have Mihir.
Hey everyone, I'm Mihir Kumar. Nice to meet everyone and be here. I also grew up as a tennis player. I played in college at Northwestern. Obviously, love the sport, and it's given me many opportunities. I have I think, more non-traditional path into the sports business world. I started outside of sports. So post college, I worked in consulting and finance roles, and always had sort of a passion and calling to try to break into the sports industry. And it definitely is not easy. And I spent a lot of time, just like many of you, I'm sure, talking to a lot of people. Trying to figure out what the right roles are, what different things mean. And so, very happy to try to be helpful. But I've spent several years at Major League Soccer. So with Cindy, I was working on a team called Emerging Ventures. We were focused on sort of finding new ways for the league to grow from the business side, which was obviously really, really interesting. Despite, I will say, I'm not a huge soccer fan, or growing up was never a player or a fan, but really obviously cool and interesting to learn the inside business intricacies of a, major global sports league. I recently left and joined a smaller firm that's now investing in and around the sports world. So, for me, it's super cool. It's a lot of like emerging technologies and new leagues, and we've looked at some pickleball and padel stuff. So, for me, it's just a perfect kind of culmination of my background and my passions, and yeah, really happy to be here and try to be helpful.
Awesome. And we'll round it out with Tracy.
Hi, I'm Tracy. Yeah, I've played tennis all my life. Was on the U.S. national team, made it to 159 in the world on the WTA tour. Got injured very early in my career. Started coaching. Was fortunate enough to coach at a private club in Florida, and that's how I started in marketing. I raised over $500,000 for 2 local children's charities through a one-day event that we had. Andy Roddick, who I grew up playing juniors with, and was able to do a philanthropic event. Somebody at Wilson Sporting Goods saw that and have been in marketing ever since. So worked for Wilson, worked for Red Bull for many years, worked in the NBA at the Pelicans, worked at Citibank as well. And now I'm at Vayner Media, which I don't know if you guys know who Gary Vee is, but very inspirational, maybe a little controversial and polarizing, but super fun working on brand strategy for brands like Jolly Rancher and Utz and like Subway. So yeah, nice to meet y'all.
Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing that. For starters, just wanted to open up and know a lot of kids know they want to work in the sports industry, but they don't exactly know how to get their start, how to break in, how to get their foot in the door. And not everyone starts off in the sports industry. I know Mihir, you didn't start off in sports yourself. So do you guys have some examples of people you know who have started in other industries, and how have they kind of use those like learned skills and translate them over into sports? And do you guys think it's necessary for people who want to work in sports to start off in sports? Anyone is welcome to join in.
Oh, okay. No, I mean, I don't think it's 100% necessary to have sports experience in order to get into sports. I would say that I've hired people that have worked at Google to work on, our digital team, and they had a passion for basketball, or worked on our on the HR marketing team when I was at City, and like, started working on sports and things like that. So no, I don't think it's 100% necessary. It's having a passion and finding the thing, like leveraging your talents in the space, and there's so many people that bring very valuable learnings and insights from other industries into sports and vice versa.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
definitely echo that. Sorry, Cindy, go ahead. Yeah, I would just say, obviously, I mentioned in my intro, I started outside of sports. I think, there's commonalities across industries that just, good work ethic, being kind of aware and, hustling, right? All of those sort of classic factors, I think, are so applicable. But without a doubt, I mean, I think from like a bigger picture point of view, I felt is sports, the business of, or working in and around sports is very competitive. These are cool industries, right? Like I think we all probably grew up playing or participating or being fans of some sort of sports, and athletes are everyone's sort of icons. And so I think I also felt like it's a very competitive industry. There's a lot of people who have insider connections and all that kind of stuff. And so, it's I think, making sure you're, obviously taking advantage of every opportunity you have to put your best foot forward, saying yes to every coffee or conversation or Zoom, or responding to every message. I think all those little things go a really long way. Just one anecdote from my point of view. I was in grad school when I decided I kind of wanted to pivot into the sports industry and pivot my career, and I still have spreadsheet that I look at every once in a while of just all the people I reached out to, and I've reached out on LinkedIn. These weren't people I knew, or I found their emails by searching, or I kind of was doing the classic hustle way, and it was something like 300 plus people that I reached out to, and I probably had conversations with a small minority of that number, but I think you got to really these are competitive industries. They're getting more competitive. There's, a lot of smart, talented people that are, wanting to work in these fields. And so just making sure you're doing all the little things right is very important.
Awesome. And if you guys mentioned it's such a competitive industry, so what is something that young people can kind of do in their applications to stand out if maybe they don't have a connection into a company and they don't know anybody? What's something they can do to kind of stand out?
I mean, I think applications are tough, right? Because you're starting at a pool of you don't know how many people. So definitely including all of your experience and really paying attention to the job descriptions and kind of, the specifics that the employers are putting out there for that specific job and tailoring your resume and your responses to that application to that specific job, I think are really important. Because your resume may be very, I will say, generalized, but you have experience that's deeper than, the surface of your general experience. So really digging deeper and answering, some of the questions based off of the job description specifically, I think is super helpful for candidates to kind of pull themselves out of that huge pool of people. If you're starting from, Indeed or a Google search or whatever it might be and applying for a job. That'd be like my little 2 cents on that one.
Yeah, I would say also like highlighting like the experiences you've had as a through college or even prior to that in high school and stuff, like whether you were an athlete or not, just what you did, your achievements, and like highlighting the work ethic that you had to do, the discipline you had to go through to be there every day, practice every day, or all that stuff. I feel like that gets overlooked or underlooked even actually. And like I feel like that's important as a candidate, especially if you're applying for a job. Like that discipline you have as an athlete is something that is very, very admirable to have and a good quality as an employer. So that's something you can highlight for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you all touched on it, the discipline and the hard work people we know in the C-suite, right? Deloitte did that. Over 70% of women in the C-suite played sport as kids, and so people really know that the value of athletes in the workplace and corporate setting. So to be able to highlight that, like a lot of the conversations I have with former players is that they're like, oh, but that's not relevant to the job. It is, because it really sets you apart from other individuals. And then the applicant tracking systems are so important. So you really have to update your resume and your LinkedIn to really ensure that it's hitting the right keywords that particular job is looking for. So Cindy touched on it a little bit, but you really have to make sure, where previously you would try to set yourself apart on the look and feel of your resume, you really want to make sure that it's geared to upload into Eightfold, upload into ADP, and you have to have it in very simple text and how your resume is presented, because it needs to be able to go into those systems rather easily in order to be even like kicking into their algorithm of what those recruiters are even going to look at. So that's something very important. And you can use Gemini, you can use Chat GPT, and a lot of these AI systems to just say, please optimize my resume for ATS tracking systems. And that will help you as a starting point.
Yeah, I would just add a couple of things too. Like I think echoing what a lot of people said, like just in general, LinkedIn or social media is so important these days, and everyone's on it, everyone's looking. So obviously, being very aware of how you're, like exactly what Tracy just said, how you're portraying yourself, obviously on your resume, but even more broadly, like on your LinkedIn, what you're engaging with on social media. I think, people really do study that stuff because, those are kind of small things that might differentiate someone or another. And then I think, one other thing I'll say just to sort of I think when it comes to differentiation, like when I was, talking to a lot of candidates at MLS, for example, I felt like, what really differentiated folks were, I already sort of alluded to, like, I think a lot of folks are passionate about sports or interested in sports, but, what is it that's tangible that, really does make you different, right? And like Ivan said, if it's something you did even in middle school or high school, right? Some experience you have with something that's related, I think really goes a long way because, I get a lot of people that say, well, I love soccer, like that's great. But I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be really stellar at, running big events or, evaluating, growth opportunities for the league, right? I think having that actual experience, even if it's not like, hey, I used to work in a business development function at another sports league. Obviously, that would be great. And not that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have that experience, but being able to point to something tangible goes a long way.
Totally, really appreciate all those insights and definitely resonate with the fact that not every or that every experience is definitely applicable, even if you don't see it right away. Actually, when I was interviewing with the US Open, I previously had only worked in like media roles and I was wanted to be a beat reporter. And I remember being in the interview and they asked me, you do know that this is not a media role, right? Like this isn't player operations. And I was like, yeah, it's something I'm interested in as well. So I actually leveraged like my part-time university role working at my university's athletic facilities, something that I don't typically have on my resume, but again, like you can find meaning in everything. So I think it's definitely important when you're trying to break into a new industry. But with that, you guys mentioned that, networking is very important. We all hear it, especially in the sports industry. Everyone knows each other. It's so small. But what are some ways that you guys have been successful in kind of networking or reaching out to people and actually forming meaningful connections? So, not making it feel like it's too transactional. You're using someone, only hitting them up when you need something. Like, what are some ways that you guys have been successful in that?
I mean, I can go first. Relationships are super important to me. It's like a core piece of the business that I work in, being in hospitality and events. So I think my biggest piece of advice is just to form genuine networking connections where you can, have those coffee chats and check-ins and keep in touch and not just hit somebody up for something, that you need in the now, but really to like form relationships with people that you want in your cabinet, that you see in your cabinet long term, and that you mesh well with. So that way, you're not only making a connection with them, but also their network. So yeah, being genuine and just keeping, connections with people, I think is super important. But I do think it matters sometimes when you're just going from one person to another and making it just very like cut and dry, transactional, like Gracie said, versus, spending time fostering relationships with certain people that may be able to help you long term as well.
Um, I think what Cindy said is so important, like keeping in touch and like she said, oh, like I know this person and like wishing them a happy birthday, or like you see they had a success recently, like just say like, hey, like congratulations on this, for example. And I think down the road, it, like she said, it's becomes genuine, and then you never know, like, oh, like okay, like I want to reach out to this person and I need to ask him for something, and then now it becomes a genuine connection, and they'd be actually more able to help you because they're like, oh, like I like this person, I trust this person, and I want to help you now. Like, oh, they just want to use me. So like I think that's very important what she said, and just keeping in touch, like she said, and reaching out, saying hi, even if you see they're in town, you're like, hey, like let's grab a coffee, let's just catch up and stuff. And I think that's really important, that being genuine and staying in touch.
Yeah, I'd echo all that and say, like definitely agree. Not having like a specific agenda or ask and really being genuinely interested, I think, in what it is you do, or right. I think everyone's going to be very open to talking about, their role and how they, their experiences more so than, hey, like this is a transactional relationship and I'm trying to get something out of it. And so, for me, I mentioned I did all this sort of mass outreach and I felt like it went better than I expected because I didn't really have an ask at that time because I didn't know what my ask was. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do or what it meant to, for example, work at, I'm from Indiana. I grew up in Indianapolis. What does it mean to work for the Indiana Pacers versus the NBA league office was like a question I genuinely was wondering. And, I'd posed that question to someone I reached out to who works on the Pacers, and they want to talk about that because I wasn't, necessarily looking for something other than information to help me think about, my life and my world. So totally agree, being authentic, staying in touch, of course. I mentioned, I kept this list. Like it sounds kind of goofy, but have everyone's name and email and take notes on each conversation. And, very long story that I can tell a quick story, a long story quickly. The reason I got my job at Major League Soccer is because of someone I'd connected with, 4 years earlier when I was in grad school. 4 years later, I happened to be working at a consulting firm on a project in Doha, Qatar during the 2022 World Cup. And Cindy knows Jay Berhalter happened to be there. And someone happened to tell me to go meet with Jay, and he happened to, basically, make me an offer at the end of that meeting. So anyway, I think those little things go a long way, and you might not realize it in the moment.
Yeah, not to discount the hustle that you did for that list of 300 either, because that's important too, because you got to make the connection somehow. So that's like an important step of it as well.
Yeah, don't be afraid to reach out. People are willing to help you more than I think you ever expect. I think people, want to do kind things and have been in the situation themselves. So I think people are willing to help more. And then just to touch more on the expansion of your network, I think about how going to an AAPI event is a good way to meet people. Going to the women's events, going to people like sports industry events. They have a lot of things like Octagon and IMG, and the agencies also put on their events. They also have recruiting events in the NBA and MLS, whether it's at the universities or in the major markets. They tend to do also recruiting events like that. So those are things just to keep in mind. And also looking online, organizations like Red Bull, they do internships. You start out as brand ambassadors and things like that, and they really believe in hiring from within. So those are things to keep in mind. Heineken does the same type of thing as well. So there's some major corporations that are not sports brands, but really play a lot in sports that are great to consider as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like you mentioned, Tracy, I think for people my age, it's a little daunting to be reaching out to people who seem a lot more senior level than a college student, but kind of being on the other side of it now that I'm at the end of college, like people have been reaching out to me to chat, and I'm always more than happy to chat with them. So I think just realize that people want to help you, and even if they don't respond right away, you're always sending LinkedIn messages into the abyss. Just know that somebody is going to respond and help out. So keep going and be confident in it. Kind of like throwing you guys back into your post-grad self, fresh out of college. I feel like I've learned a lot in college, but there's also so much I don't know still. What are some like early lessons you guys learned on in your early on in your career that kind of have stuck with you and have helped guide you to where guys are today?
I guess I'll go first. Right after graduating, I got my master's at SMU, and I thought I was gonna go into like a more like a data analytics field and study that. And then after realizing, first I didn't get the job, but then like I realized that like I kind of miss tennis, and like I feel like I couldn't leave sport in general and hang that up. So I just kind of found my way back into the sport and realized that like this was like my passion, and I feel like expecting the unexpected and not like focusing on like, oh, I want to do this and that's what I'm gonna do. It's like keep your mind open and be like, oh, like I could actually do this. And now I'm in a role where I'm developing young junior players, which after graduating from SMU, I was like, there's no way I'm gonna be a tennis coach. So I think just keeping your mind open and be like, oh, like I really want to do this, but maybe that's not the right path for me. You don't know, like kind of down the road. So be open with your mind for sure.
Yeah, I feel like I can segue from that one. Definitely keeping an open mind is key too. I broke into sports by starting as a receptionist at the WTA, and I feel like one of my greatest lessons that I've learned is like really knowing your organization, like the ins and outs, even if it doesn't pertain to you. And that's actually something that I learned early on because I was a receptionist at the WTA. I knew every department, I knew every person in every department, I knew all their business, just don't discount what can come out of answering the phones at, a big organization or one of these sport entities. If that's something that you would kind of like turn your nose up at, I would say think twice maybe. But yeah, really understanding your organization, I think in general is important. Understanding the hierarchy, understanding all the things that are going on will really help you do your role even better than you thought you could, no matter what your role is. So, one of my key lessons.
And then, kind of touching on the representation part of it, do you guys have any kind of specific examples of where you found yourself in different rooms where maybe there wasn't a ton of AAPI representation, and kind of how do you navigate that, especially in the sports world where, there's not the most diversity, and can you kind of share some examples of that?
I mean, on the flip side, this is probably not the answer to the question, but I really enjoy working in sport because I feel like we do a decent job at representing diversity, specifically in tennis. I don't know, working at the USTA, I see people of all shapes, sizes, colors, capabilities, everything. So that's one of the things that brought me back to tennis, that I really, really enjoy. So not necessarily a challenge, but something that definitely brought me back to the sport.
And then if you guys had like one piece of advice for someone kind of my age, college student, what they could be doing right now, what is one thing that you would do now that you know you have all this industry knowledge and you've been working in sports for so long?
I will say you guys should be using AI for all this sort of, you know, research and industries and learning. Like, I think definitely take full advantage of how much information is available now to, for example, find the right person to maybe try to chat to at this company or in this, industry or I think there's just so much it's there's more noise as well, but there's also just a lot, more opportunity to, be smarter and be more, direct and sort of have, some advantages over, others if you're using these tools, obviously in the right way. So, you use them because I think, get good at them. That's, not to sound like a doomsayer, but like that really is the future, I think. And if you can, differentiate yourself with just little things like, streamlining your, outreach list or whatever it is, I think that's going to go a long way. And I'll keep going. I'll just say, yeah, I think other folks mentioned this, but like, be bold also. I think, like I think Tracy said, if you do reach out to folks, like some people won't respond. Some people will maybe give you, very few people will give you a rude response. And I think the majority, maybe not the vast majority, but the majority of people will, want to try to help, want to take an interest, especially if you can form, some sort of, kind of immediate connection with them. So it definitely is, Gracie, you mentioned, it's daunting maybe, but I think there's lots of great people out there that want to be helpful. And as Cindy said, I think, the industry is getting more diverse, and there's, more people from different backgrounds and looks and, cultures kind of entering the business. So, use AI and be bold. Those are my 2 points.
Be like Mihir, like don't be afraid to reach out to people.
Exactly.
I mean, that's awesome, because it really, everything that, like, the opportunities come from your network, right? Most of the time it is going to come from your network. So don't be afraid to broaden that way. But I think one thing that I always really take away was understand your strengths and embrace your strengths, because sometimes we dwell on what we could do better or what we don't have on our resume and things like that. Let's, like, really celebrate your strengths and be able to position yourself, because there are going to be organizations that are looking for that, and that will help you find the right fit, because when you're able to play into your strengths, that's when the work is going to be great as well.
I would say too, just don't be afraid to take a role that you didn't necessarily see yourself in, which is kind of playing to your strengths. But back to my reception days, I didn't think that's what I was going to be doing, right? But I took the risk, and it eventually, paid off. So definitely don't be afraid to do something that you didn't think you would necessarily want to put on your resume at a certain point in time. Not that there's anything wrong with being a receptionist. I'm just saying, when
But
it
you make
wasn't my first.
too, right? Like, because like that's like a form of sacrifice to make sure you were getting to the
Yes,
you wanted. And it was the same when I was teaching tennis, right? I was making a good living, but when I decided to go to corporate America, I had to, like, I took a pay cut to go to Wilson Sporting Goods. So,
exactly.
like, I knew that if I want to try corporate America, it's kind of, this is my time to try it. And Wilson is a good brand. So I'm going to move to Chicago, get like a pair of closed-toed shoes. Being in Florida, now I'm going to get a pair of closed-toed shoes and move up to Chicago and do promotions. So I was like working the booths of the tournaments that I was playing just like a few
Yeah,
years before that. And so it's a similar thing. I really,
exactly.
you have to like weigh, like, what are the positives, and if you have that goal in mind, it might be the stepping stone that you need to get where you want to go. Yeah, that's a great
Exactly.
point. Yeah.
Definitely. And what are some ways you guys think that young people can kind of find these roles in sports? I feel like obviously it's very competitive, but I feel like a lot of young people just look to the teams, the big leagues. But as Tracy mentioned, there's a lot of different, more like non-conventional pathways into sports, working with brands that touch upon sports or working with arenas or vendors. What are some like ways that people can get involved that are beyond the traditional pathways?
Yeah, I mean, look at all the sports that, or look at all the brands that sponsor sports. So if you have a particular sport that, whether it be tennis, right? We know that JP Morgan is a sponsor of you. Let's just take US Open as an example, right? You have JP Morgan, you have Faj, I don't know know how to say that, Greek yogurt, but Fage, right? You have Emirates. There's so many brands. You have Grey Goose, right? So those are already, that's 4 different industries that you can look at. And so look at the sports and look at the brands that surround it. You know that the NF, with World Cup, Lay's potato chips. They just like released something with Will Ferrell, and they're around all sports. Lay's potato chips is so. Doritos plays very heavily during Super Bowl. Look at the brands that are there, and that will help you see the other opportunities. And then the agencies, right? You have, like, you can be an agent. You can also really go from the marketing perspective. You can also be like a data analyst, like Ivan was talking about, of those people that are doing the Moneyball things that are going to help find the best athletes for the NBA and MLB players. So there's so many, you can be in finance and be in sports. So I think, a lot of people, it's not just like on court. I think there's so much surrounding the sport that you can be an accountant, right? There's so many different things that you can do. So, yeah, don't discount that. Those are just other opportunities and other pathways to get into the sport you love or something that you're passionate about.
Totally. And we only have about 10 minutes left, but wanted to open it up to the audience. Lisa, if you have any questions, we appreciate you joining.
Cool. Okay. First of all, I want to thank all of you for coming on. This is really cool for me to kind of hear everybody's story from different backgrounds as well. I've been taking notes. So I guess the main question I had. So, I mean, what I'm struggling with a lot right now is I'm a post grad, and I'm I have a degree in sports management. I have several experiences with me, but I'm struggling to get hired in the places that I want to get hired in. So I obviously am like I'm willing to learn. Like my number one thing is I'm willing to learn anything. So, my question is, what are some resources that I can use, like without being in school now, that can help me get the upper hand in getting these roles, right? So like I mean, like I mentioned, like I want to go into event management for like sports events or like teams, but I'm also open to like all kinds of roles, like you guys were mentioning. Like my eyes are open and I've been applying to many kinds of roles, right? So what do you feel like are some resources that I can go to? And then what specific skills? I mean, I know here you mentioned AI, so I definitely want to get into that. But like, what are some specific things that you think organizations are looking for in someone going entry level?
I think enthusiasm is super important, which I think you clearly have that. So, being enthusiastic and raising your hand for, any role, I think is really important. Especially being in the events industry, there are always a ton of like temporary roles that you could take on to try on different organizations or different roles within the events industry. So kind of keep an open mind out for that. Um, but yeah, I would say, the enthusiasm and just like the showing of your work ethic, I think is really important because I feel like it's harder and harder to find people who are willing to get dirty and do the work, especially in the events industry because it looks so glamorous, but guess what? It's not. So it's just, yeah, it's just something that I think, when I'm hiring people resonates with me when there's enthusiasm, willing to, jump in and get your hands dirty. I think really that's better than any resource I could direct you to in terms of the events industry specifically. It's a little bit crazy.
Yeah. So like saying like emphasize that greatly when you're kind of
Yeah,
applying for
yeah,
these roles.
yeah.
Okay.
And like when when you make it to that interview stage, just, be genuine, be authentic, share your enthusiasm for, the role and what you would bring to the table and highlight the fact that you're willing to learn and do anything. I mean, it's super important.
I would also
Perfect.
volunteer.
Thank you, Cindy.
Yeah. And just to build on
Yes,
what
I've been doing that for sure.
volunteer at local events, whether it be like, Special Olympics, USTA, the divisions also have their events and things like that. So if your ultimate goal is around the tennis industry, that's also a good way to gain experience is just very much at the local level and volunteering there. And then
Yes, I have been doing that and it's been pretty cool. So I'm working to do more like this month and the upcoming months as well. So
awesome. And then yeah, Cindy mentioned like so a lot of the agencies they do have those temporary like 6 month to 8 month like positions for their key events through golf and tennis and soccer and things like that. So I would look at like the Octagons, the Wassermans, the IMGs of the WME of the world, so that you can because they have those like temporary, whether they call them an internship or like specific event marketing or event management roles. Those are always a good way to get inside and to get a start there. So those, I would look at those. And like Teamwork Online has that as well. Teamwork.
yes, I have
Yes,
been looking for
but
it. Yes.
it's hard because there's too many people on there. I would look more at like directly at the like the actual agency's website.
No, for sure. Yeah.
I recommended this to someone I was speaking to a few weeks ago, but I think like having one or two unique things when you do get that conversation process that you've done like extra research on to figure out where like, for example, it's some headline you read or some news that was published or something that really like I totally agree, sort of the passion and enthusiasm, but then kind of having like that extra little, nugget of something that really shows like you clearly prepared. Obviously, you're already preparing, but like, right, you went a step further. You actually clicked on the link and read the article, or right, you did sort of that extra layer of work. I think goes a really long way, and shows like, I think the way I think about a lot of this is there's, as you already know, there's so many people, right? There's a lot of noise in all this process. And so anything you can do to sort of, right, show that you're differentiating yourself in a little way, I think goes a really long way. So, having like researching the person's bio on LinkedIn and, having some comment about something that they did in the past, little things that tend to be personal go a really long way.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I think we have time for another question if you have any more, but if not, all good as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had a good amount written down, but you guys answered everything. So that means that this was successful for me. So thank you. I'd love to get all of your contacts so I can kind of like, have you in my network as well. I feel like it'd be pretty helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, that was going to be my next question. What's the best way to reach out to you guys? I don't know if
Yeah.
you guys love LinkedIn or if there's a better way to contact you.
Yeah, via LinkedIn. That's the way to start.
Definitely.
Yeah, same.
Awesome. Well, yeah, again, greatly appreciate all of your guys' time. This is super awesome. We started from nothing really this past couple of months, so to see it kind of come to fruition is exciting. And very excited to see what's for the future for APITA. But again, thank you guys for joining and super helpful.
Thank you once again, all of you. Appreciate everything you said. It was cool to hear from all of you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all.
Thank
Thank
Yes,
you.
you.
Have a
nice
good
to meet
night.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.